The Seventh Inning Stretch, Chapter 64. A person stands outside. Maybe she's a child. In her hand, a bottle of bubbles and a magic blowing wand. She can blow bubbles that get bigger and bigger without ever popping. After blowing a bubble as big as a house, she stops, turns slightly right, left, up, or down, and starts another bubble. The first one is still there. Improbable, unpoppable, but still, it's there. The second one forms different surfaces, almost invisible. But those surfaces partially touch the first one. The child moves from this bubble and begins another, then another, all from slightly different positions, or maybe the same position. Soon, there's an infinite number of bubbles all around her, as big as a house, a planet, a galaxy, a baseball. Each bubble is real. Each touches each other in different ways. Each bubble is a separate reality. The child is God or Buddha, Yahweh or Allah, Vishnu or science. Or maybe you don't even care who created the bubbles. Maybe the child isn't even there. You can always see the other bubbles because you're distracted by your own bubble. But wait, you can't always see them. Your own bubble is your sphere of influence. That's why sports with spheres resonate so much with you. Baseball, basketball, soccer, tennis, lacrosse, golf, all those others have it right. Hockey, almost got it. Football? Nobody understands what they're thinking, but it's sure fun to watch anyway when nobody's getting hurt. There's no explanation for badminton. A strange, otherworldly buzzing kept gnawing at Neal. For the longest time, or maybe for just a few seconds, he ignored it. Then, rolling, moaning, twisting, and grabbing, he shoved his glasses halfway on and reached for his phone. It was Farina texting in about a photo assignment Neal was working on. And like Samuel Taylor Coleridge and his epic poem that got interrupted halfway through, Neal quickly forgot about Xanadu or whatever weird thing he was just dreaming about. He had to answer Farina, then get back into work. His column and comic strip that yesterday were fine, today had to be totally rethought, reworked, and rewritten. Chapter 65. Hope couldn't have been more calm when he stepped up to the plate, but the rest of his teammates, Detroit, and the baseball world was on pins and needles. When you think about it, being on pins and needles is entirely the worst possible analogy. It's a known fact that nobody, not even tailors, purposely perch on pins or needles to watch a ball game or anything really. Everybody else was nervous, anxious, excited, charged, in suspense, or any other word or phrase you might find in a thesaurus except on tenterhooks. Nobody has ever watched a game, willingly at least, while sitting on pins and needles or hanging from tenterhooks. They were all nervous because Hope had already hit 72 home runs by early June. The single-season record for home runs was 73, and that took until the end of September. A smattering of players have hit 4 home runs in one game. Hope was one of them. A very few number of players have hit home runs in several consecutive games. Hope was one of them. Only one person has ever hit a home run each time he came to the plate. He was Hope. Check that. It's not a true statement. Hope is the only player who, when he was allowed to swing the bat, slapped a home run each time. Over and over again, opposing managers just called for the intentional walk. One time, against the notorious New York team, the pitcher threw 2 balls well outside of the strike zone, and then hoping to catch Hope, unaware, whistled a 97-mile-per-hour pitch right across the heart of the plate. Pezzowie! That ball landed somewhere in the next burrow. So you can understand if Hope was calm and confident when he approached the plate. Either he'd get a pitch he could hit out of Rosa Park, or he'd be jogging happily down to first. Not much fazed Hope. Even Dante with his silly, all hope abandon ye who enter here didn't faze him. The first pitch looked exactly like the next 3. They were all so far off the plate, the catcher had to almost stand in the on-deck circle to snag them. "It's a nice night for a stroll," said Hope, arriving at first base. But that seemed like kind of a lie, since before anyone knew it, Hope turned on the afterburners and slid safely into second, beating the surprise tag by a country mile. He had stolen second. Chapter 66. By now, tickets to see Hope were being scalped at triple face value. Baseball fans, the rich ones from as far away as Japan, were invading Detroit, booking the few luxury hotel rooms and dining atop the Renaissance Center. Fans even poured in from neighboring Cleveland, which hadn't seen a professional-looking baseball team in decades. It was clear the city needed to consider building more places to eat and sleep. Until this season, the demand wasn't anywhere north of non-existent. Bald Mikey, the Jolly Cooking Channel host, was seen on more than one occasion at his Cleveland restaurant, flipping the channel over from his supposed team to watch the Bengals. "Detroit, eh?" he was heard muttering from time to time. In a much smaller venue, in Detroit's Corktown neighborhood, Greg Mudge watched the games on his vintage Philco as he slowly rehabbed the building he bought for pennies on the dollar. Fans gotta eat, he reasoned, and added a few slices of avocado to the sandwich he was crafting as carefully as his deli. Chapter 67. Bald Mikey, the celebrity chef, and Greg Mudge, the Corktown restaurant rehabber, had never met, but both were invited to Detroit's famous Coney Island hot dog corner at the intersection of Lafayette Lane and American Avenue. Both of their invitations had appeared on their kitchen counters. Neither one of them remembered bringing them in with a junk mail and bills, but there they sat, the invitations on their counters and them at the Coney place, staring at each other. "Aren't you that guy?" started Greg. "Avocado and deli meat?" asked Mikey. Obviously, their invitations were slightly different, but their expressions were both the same when a visitor whooshed into their booth and announced, "Great, I see you two have finally met." Detroit had never been known as a culinary capital. The city got its start as a fur trading outpost. Then it became known as a lumbering hub. During the shameful and disgusting slavery days, it was the final stop on the Underground Railroad, and by the end of the 19th century, Detroit was known as the stove capital of the world. An obscure farmer's son named Henry cobbled together a bunch of spare parts and made a horseless carriage in 1896. Detroit's been the Motor City ever since. There was nothing suggesting that Mikey and Mudgie's meeting was a historic event, signaling a future nobody could ever have predicted for Detroit. But then again, there was nothing suggesting it wasn't. Chapter 68. Fresh off his spy story, L. Rick was casting around looking for something fascinating or worthy of his efforts. An anonymous source had kept sending him notes in the mail about the city's mayor and his alleged wrongdoings. He's no spy guy, but maybe I'll do a little more digging, thought Elric as he drove east along Jefferson Avenue. Chapter 69. A group of very attractive women sat talking baseball at their favorite booth, the one that faced two different TVs, depending on where you sat. Every now and again, a barfly would try hitting on them, but when he couldn't tell them the difference between the infield fly rule and a sacrifice fly, they quickly lost interest. It's not that they didn't have suitors, it's just that their suitors weren't suitable. When their favorite player would come up to the plate or make a great play, whether they were in the bar, at the park, or watching at home, they made one of those heart signs with their fingers pressed together and thumbs touching. Originally, it was just a joke, mimicking young tween girls. But the joke became codified in their rituals. If they didn't make the heart sign, superstition told them something bad would happen to their player. They didn't know this. There was no way they could. But one of them, by making the heart sign, had an unusual, very surrealistic effect on a Detroit Bengal. Just as they flashed their hearts, Anna walked up with a round of drinks purchased for them by yet another unfortunate soul who would soon find out what foul balls really meant. "Oh, look," said Anna, "it's a hearty party." English was Anna's second language, and God love her, she really enjoyed rhymes. She used them whenever possible, even if they only barely made any sense. It endeared her to everybody even more. Chapter 70. By mid-June, Willie Palmer approached each game with a smile in his gut he'd never experienced before. Sure, back in 1984, he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. But that was a long time ago, and now he was managing to keep the feeling going day in and day out. It certainly helped his attitude when Hope handed him a little slip of paper earlier that month. He wasn't at all sure what it meant, just a time, a place, a date, and an odd sentence. The date part made him inordinately happy. Yes, the calendar date was coming up in a few days, but the word date filled him with happiness. When was the last time he'd been on a legitimate date? He hadn't even realized something epic was missing in his life until Hope showed him the little slip of paper. Then, all his waking hours, not devoted to the Bengals, about 15 minutes a day lately, was spent thinking about the summer solstice. He'd never paid any never mind to the new agey things like solstices. The only thing it meant to him was the longest day of the year with more light to play ball. This year's solstice was on a Monday, but the Bengals played a rare daytime game. The extra daylight wouldn't really matter much. But the day game afforded him the opportunity to have the night off. That is, until Hope put the note in his hand with the odd sentence, "Venus will be rising."